We just talked about it. My dad had a 66 Impala. And we bought one. Did you ever see that red one? Yeah, I did. I brought it by here. The red Impala. I brought it by. Come on. Anyway, as I was leaving Meekum, I was walking out the door, and they said,
Terry Eugene Hulk Hogan Bollea was the most recognizable face in professional wrestling for more than 4 decades. A sun-bronzed, mustachioed superhero whose red and yellow aura leapt off television sets and into mainstream culture. By the end of his life, his estimated net worth hovered around $25 million, a figure shaped as much by blockbuster paydays, merchandising, reality television, and a headline-making legal victory over Gawker as by the financial setbacks that followed an expensive divorce and years of medical bills. The number reflects a career that both minted money and devoured it, leaving behind a fortune that, while far smaller than fans might imagine for the most famous wrestler on earth, still underscored how thoroughly Hulkamania once ran wild over American pop culture. On July 24th, 2025, Hulk Hogan died at age 71 after reported cardiac arrest. This biography reflects his full life, with that final development addressed in the cause of death section. Early life. Hogan was born August 11th, 1953, in Augusta, Georgia, to Pietro Peter Bollea, a construction foreman, and Ruth V. named Moody Bollea, a homemaker and dance teacher. When Terry was still a toddler, the family relocated to Port Tampa, Florida, where the young Bollea discovered 2 passions that would foreshadow his future: baseball and showmanship. A little league pitcher with a powerful arm, he briefly nurtured dreams of making it to the majors before a series of injuries and a deeper love of music redirected his ambitions. Terry was not an only child. He had an older brother, Alan Bollea, whose life was marked by tragedy, dying at 38 in 1986. That loss, paired with the eventual passing of both his parents, would later loom over Hogan's reflections on family, forgiveness, and faith. Academically, Bollea's path moved through Hillsborough Community College and the University of South Florida, where he studied business but increasingly found the classroom competing with the stage. A towering 6 feet 7 inches with a bass guitar slung low, he co-founded the bar band Ruckus in the mid-1970s, becoming a staple of the Tampa Bay music circuit. It was in those smoky, neon-lit clubs that fate walked in. Wrestlers Jack and Gerald Briscoe spotted the hulking musician and suggested he get trained. The mat, not the mic, would become his destiny. Personal life. Hogan's personal life, as public as any reality star's, unfolded in 3 acts of marriage. Linda Claridge, 1983 to 2009. The marriage that coincided with the zenith of Hulkamania brought 2 children, both of whom became public figures through the family's VH1 reality show Hogan Knows Best. Brooke Hogan, born 1988, a singer and television personality, and Nick Hogan, born 1990. Their divorce, acrimonious, expensive, and deeply tabloid, drained tens of millions of dollars from Hogan's fortune and exposed the fragility of his off-screen life. Jennifer McDaniel, 2010 to 2021, a quieter, more private union that ended shortly before Hogan re-entered the headlines with a new romance. Sky Daly, 2023 to 2025, a yoga instructor and mother of 3 from a previous relationship. Daly married Hogan in a small Florida ceremony on September 22, 2023. In December 2023, the couple were baptized together, a public declaration of Hogan's recommitment to his long-professed Christian faith. In his final years, he spoke frequently of surrender, forgiveness, and spiritual renewal. Hogan grew up identifying as Christian, often pointing to training, prayers, and vitamins as the ethos of his character and his life. But the baptism at age 70, white robes, bandana, and all, felt like a culminating moment. A man who had survived lawsuits, scandal, divorce, and decades of physical punishment, finally looking for peace that couldn't be body-slammed into existence. Beyond wrestling, Hogan acted in Rocky III, 1982, as the outrageous Thunderlips, led films such as Suburban Commando and Mr. Nanny, appeared on reality television, hosted, endorsed, and pitched everything from grills to energy drinks. His ill-fated Pastamania restaurant, His Hogan's Beach Shop retail brand and a host of merchandising deals kept his name on storefronts and souvenirs. He even hovered at the intersection of sports and politics, appearing at the 2024 Republican National Convention. One more reminder that the Hulkster understood crowds, of any kind, better than most. Professional career. After training under the notoriously tough Hiro Matsuda, Hogan debuted in the late 1970s, cutting his teeth in regional territories before a stop in the American Wrestling Association, AWA, made him a budding attraction. But it was Vince McMahon's World Wrestling Federation, WWF, in the early 1980s that built Hulk Hogan into the mainstream megastar. On January 23, 1984, he defeated the Iron Sheik for the WWF Championship, ushering in a new era of national expansion built on pay-per-view spectacles, Saturday morning cartoons, and catchphrases every school kid could recite. "What you gonna do when Hulkamania runs wild on you?" wasn't just a taunt, it was the mission statement of the 1980s WWF boom. Hogan headlined the first several WrestleManias, peaking at WrestleMania 3, 1987, where he body-slammed Andre the Giant and defended the WWF title in front of a crowd marketed as 93,173 at the Silverdome. Whether that attendance figure is kayfabe or not, the moment was real. Hogan had ascended from wrestling star to pop culture deity. If the 80s were red and yellow, the 90s belonged to black and white. In 1996, Hogan executed the most shocking heel turn in wrestling history, joining Scott Hall and Kevin Nash to form the New World Order, NWO, in World Championship Wrestling, WCW. As Hollywood Hogan, he breathed new life into his character and helped WCW beat the WWF in the ratings war for 83 consecutive weeks. This second act proved he wasn't a one-decade wonder. He was a master of reinvention. Hogan returned to WWE in the 2000s for nostalgia-fueled moments, including his emotional WrestleMania X8 match with The Rock in 2002, and he later spent time in TNA wrestling as an on-screen authority figure. Physically, he was breaking down, multiple back and neck surgeries, chronic pain, and the literal erosion of the spine from decades of atomic leg drops took their toll. But even as his in-ring work ended, he effectively retired from regular competition in 2012. His brand never really did. He was inducted into the WWE Hall of Fame twice, once as Hulk Hogan and later as part of the NWO, securing his place in wrestling's pantheon. Hogan's empire was rocked in 2015 when a leaked private recording captured him using racist language. WWE severed ties and scrubbed him from its Hall of Fame listings. 3 years later, he was reinstated after issuing public apologies, though debate over redemption versus accountability continued to shadow him. The other defining headline of his later years was the Gawker lawsuit, where a jury awarded him $140 million, a figure ultimately reduced in settlement, but seismic enough to bankrupt the media company and ignite national debates about privacy, press freedom, and power. House tour and car collection. Hogan's off-screen life had a red and yellow extravagance befitting a global superstar. His 17,000 square foot Bel Air, Florida mansion, famously showcased on Hogan Knows Best and MTV Cribs, started as a $25 million listing during the housing boom and eventually sold for $6.2 million in 2012. Post-divorce, he downsized to a $3.3 million home on Clearwater Beach, a sleek, modern property that still shouted celebrity, but whispered more softly than the palatial chateau of his peak reality TV years. As for wheels, Hogan had a penchant for bold, muscular Americana. Among the most famous pieces in his garage was a custom red and yellow 1994 Dodge Viper RT/10, which he later auctioned for charity. Reports over the years also tied him to luxury mainstays like the Mercedes-Benz S500, along with various exotics that came and when his fortunes rose, fell, and were redirected. Hogan's car collection mirrored his life, oversized, attention-grabbing, and subject to reinvention. College career. Unlike many athletes whose collegiate success is a chapter unto itself, Hogan's college career was primarily a prelude. He attended Hillsborough Community College and then the University of South Florida, But the gravitational pull of music, and eventually wrestling, proved stronger than anything on the syllabus. The decisive dropout wasn't failure, it was a pivot. To a man who would make a fortune telling fans to believe in themselves. Leaving campus for a bass guitar and a bench press was the first great act of self-belief. Cause of death. On July 24th, 2025, Hulk Hogan died at age 71, reportedly from cardiac arrest at his home in Clearwater, Florida. In the days prior, his close circle had publicly downplayed concerns over his health, noting he was recovering from a major cervical spine surgery that impacted his vocal cords and breathing. In death, as in life, the line between the indestructible superhero and the vulnerable man beneath the bandana came sharply into focus. Hulk Hogan didn't just headline wrestling cards. He helped invent the modern template of the wrestling megastar. Media-savvy, merchandised, mainstream. He was a 12-time world champion, a 2-time WWE Hall of Famer, an actor, a reality TV figure, and at times a deeply polarizing public personality. His influence runs through every generation of wrestlers who learned to speak to America like he did, directly, loudly, and with an irresistible rhythm of faith, biceps, and bombast. Yet his story is just as much about the man who tried to reconcile Terry Bollea with Hulk Hogan. The divorces, the lawsuits, the public shaming and public forgiveness, the embrace of faith, the surgeries, the scars. In the end, he remained what he always had been. Too big for the ring to contain, and too human for the myth to fully hold. And when the final bell rang, the world remembered not just the atomic leg drop, but the seismic impact of a performer who made millions of kids tear their shirts, cup their ears, and believe, if only for a few glorious minutes, that they too could be immortal.